Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this ComputerWorld webinar all about CloudIQ. So this webinar is aimed at those of you that may be already using Dell EMC storage solutions, or maybe you're considering your storage options at the moment. So I'm really pleased to have Stuart Hunwick, who is Field CTO for Storage at Dell EMC, here with me today. And Stuart, I'm going to let you run with this and show people the art of the possible, I suppose, with CloudIQ.
Terrific, yeah, thanks Barry. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I'll just ask if Megan could give me permission to share screen, because I will need that, of course. And then I'll go ahead and share and we'll take you through some of the cool things that CloudIQ can do. Thanks very much.
Should be able to now.
Yeah, I see that. All right, folks, so let's get straight into it. So as Barry said, my name's Stu. I work for Dell Technologies across Europe. And what I wanted to do today is give you a little bit of an overview of what makes CloudIQ special. We're going to start off with some slideware just to set the scene, and then we'll spend most of the time in a demo environment so you can understand how this could be used in the real world and some of the real use cases that we have for this platform. So the platform's really about helping IT organizations out there try to address this sort of gap that's starting to form. And the gap, of course, being that whilst data grows exponentially, the number of people we have to control that and the number of people we have to administer the systems does not grow at the same rate. So each and every year, we're all being asked to do more, right, and to control more systems and to look after more data, more environments. So how do we kind of keep on top of that? Well, we think that one way is to slightly change the way that we manage and monitor. So today, oftentimes what we do is a more reactive style of management and monitoring, whereby we're kind of manually pulling logs down and examining them, the contents, looking at it on a system by system basis. What we want to do, of course, is switch that and pivot to a more proactive style of management and monitoring, whereby we can leverage some of the new technologies like machine learning, like artificial intelligence, to try and spot patterns and find things before they become an issue. For instance, identifying where we've seen a little bit of unusual behavior that doesn't quite fit our normal usage, and actually showing how that might impact a completely unrelated workload that happens to share the same storage system under the covers. This kind of thing's really time-saving, and I'm sure many of you will know that being able to find performance issues in a complex environment can be pretty time-consuming. It can take quite a while to really pin these issues down. But with a tool like this, what it can do is really drastically reduce the amount of time, and I'll show you that when we switch over to the live demo as well. So as I say, it's about pivoting from that reactive to the proactive style, and in order to do that, what we do is we combine the best of human intelligence with the machine intelligence aspect. So the machine intelligence comes from the machine learning algorithms, which we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at. And the human intelligence comes from the operators, the people actually using the tool, interpreting the data that it gives them, and using that to generate these real results. Some of the things that we're going to see today. So first up, we'll see how we can use this tool to help reduce risk, to understand things like how healthy the systems are, to understand where we've got some unusual behavior, some anomalies, where it's coming from, why it's happening, what it's causing, and even to spot things like workloads that are contending for resource. Perhaps we've got a storage system with a bunch of different workloads on it, and where it's a little bit too busy, we're able to spot which workloads are making it too busy and which workloads are suffering from that. Keeping on top of health is really important as well. Where have we got problems in terms of system health? Where have we got a challenge whereby the system is not running optimally? How can we spot that? How can we fix it? And how can we identify it so that it doesn't happen again? But alongside that, we want to be able to plan ahead. We want to be able to understand what the future looks like. Does the future mean we're going to run out of capacity tomorrow? Does it mean we're going to run out of capacity in 6 months? Does it mean we're going to need more performance? Or all of these things? What we're able to do is we're able to help you better understand the future by understanding what your usage looks like and excuse me, has looked like up until now. So we can do things like plot your current usage going forwards into the future, but we can also spot really unusual patterns of growth. Think about this. You've got an amount of capacity, and out of nowhere, suddenly you get a very rapid spike in capacity consumption. That could be all kinds of things. There's a chance it could be a ransomware attack, though. CloudIQ can spot things like that, and it can spot these capacity anomalies and say, hey, actually, this is really unusual behavior. And if this carries on, we're going to see a significant shortfall. Alongside that, we can help improve the productivity of the overall environment, of your environment, of your infrastructure as a whole. And we can do that because CloudIQ's got an incredibly broad coverage. It looks after pretty much everything in the Dell Technologies ISG portfolio. So today we're talking about storage, but CloudIQ also supports server, it supports network, it supports HCI, data protection, unstructured data, pretty much everything across the board. So it lets you have that one place that you can look at everything from. Alongside that, you can also bring in colleagues. So you can work with colleagues so they can see what you can see. And those colleagues don't even have to be within your organization. You can work with a trusted advisor from a business partner or from us as Dell Technologies, or a combination of the two. The final use case I wanted to bring to your attention, and this is brand new actually, is something called cybersecurity. So within CloudIQ, we can now help make you aware of cybersecurity risks in your organization. We can spot things that perhaps aren't quite configured right or might need to be shuffled around a little bit, just to make sure that they're set up in an optimal way so that you're protected against possible cybersecurity attacks. I'll show you how we do this when we look at the demonstration in a few seconds. So the key really is that it's one single portal, one single environment for everything across the board, storage right the way through to networking. And as we go through that, of course, we have the SAN environment, we have data protection, hyperconverged, the servers, and even the virtual machines themselves. As of quite recently, we can now integrate this with other tools as well. So within your organization, you probably use things like Teams, like Slack. We're using Teams right now, but also things like ServiceNow. Well, all of these tools have the capability to connect via API to pretty much anything else. So CloudIQ can raise a ticket in ServiceNow. It can post to a Teams channel. It can chat with you directly in Slack. All of these things using the CloudIQ webhook API functionality, which is part and parcel of the service. Let me show one last slide, and then we'll switch over to the demo. And the slide is this one here. This is, in effect, the CloudIQ support matrix. So if you've got anything on this screen, you're able to use CloudIQ today. In most cases, enabling it is as quick as clicking a box in the user interface for the platform, which takes maybe 5 or 10 seconds. You have to have a valid support contract to do so, but there's no additional charge for CloudIQ. You're not charged separately for it. It's just part and parcel of your overall support contract. So you can see here we've got the PowerEdge server line. Then as we move across, we've got the full storage portfolio, and then the networking, data protection, and finally across to the end, we've got the converged and hyperconverged platforms as well. As I said, pretty much everything in the Dell Technologies data center portfolio. The idea being that you can have multiple of these in one CloudIQ instance, letting you keep a solid eye on everything that's going on in your environment. Now with that, let's go ahead, switch over and check out what that actually looks like in practice. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So this is CloudIQ. I'm actually logged into CloudIQ here. CloudIQ is hosted on the web by us as Dell Technologies. So you don't need to install anything in your environment to get it up and running. All you need to do is log on to the CloudIQ instance using your credentials. It's also supported on both Android and iOS, so you can access it via the fully supported mobile apps. And again, all you need to do is put the app on your phone, log in with the credentials provided. On the apps, it can send push notifications out to you, and it can also send email notifications out and API calls, as we mentioned just a few moments ago. So all I've done here is I've logged in with my credentials, and I've got access to this environment, which we'll use for this demo. So as soon as we log in, what we can see here is that we've got system health. So we've got a quick snapshot of how healthy our systems are overall, handful that are quite poor, some that are fair, and then quite the majority here that are in a good state. Now all of them are given a score out of 100. So you can see here these ones are scoring 80, this one is scoring 75, and then down here these ones are scoring 60. We'll dig into system health in a few minutes, but the point of this window is it just gives us a quick snapshot of all of our systems. Ideally, we want them all to be good, but this way we can see where they're not and perhaps understand where we might want to take action. As we scroll down, we can see that we've got a capacity window as well. So it's keeping an eye on our forecasts for us. And we've got a couple of systems that are due to fill up inside a quarter, a few more within a month. And you can see that forecast on the right-hand side of the graph as well. So you can see the projection as we look ahead. Just a handful within a week, one that's already full, and 7 that are in this imminent category. So this is that I mentioned earlier, the short-term anomaly detection. CloudIQ has detected that, hey, if this behavior continues, you're going to run out of space quite quickly indeed. But it's not short of space now. It's just that it's detected an upcoming shortfall. Underneath that, we're keeping an eye on performance. So we can see any outstanding performance impacts that have been detected. Where have we detected something that's slowing down workloads in the environment? There's a handful of these outstanding. We'll dig into these shortly. Then we have any systems that need a code upgrade, any storage we can reclaim, and finally, both alerts and cybersecurity risks. So the idea of this page is that it gives us that one single view of the entire environment. I can see everything that's going on, and anything that needs my attention, a capacity shortfall, a performance problem, a code upgrade, a health issue, you name it, it's all up here for me to see, plain as day. So I get this one kind of situations to watch screen on that single pane of glass. But of course, I can then dig in and get much more detail if I want to. So let's do that now. Now there's a lot of different ways that we can actually dig in here. And some of them are, excuse me, some of them are things like just clicking the name of a system or using this tree down the left-hand side to navigate. But we also have this search bar at the top. So let's imagine a real-world use case. For instance, we've got a VM, it's hosting a critical application, and it's not performing as well as it should be. So for some reason, it's slowing down. Now, we don't know exactly why, but we know that the users are saying, hey, our critical application, it's not quite working right. We need to take action there. What we can do is we can just pop in and start searching for it. So CloudIQ's got a massive search feature. It will search everything. That can be file systems, LUNs, switch ports. It can be servers, VMs, you name it. And it also auto-complete. So I type mr_, and I know it's this one here, VM1. Let's check it out. So I hit VM1, and now we're looking at an individual VM. And there's quite a lot going on here, but at the top, what we can see is some details about this VM. How much capacity has it got? What operating system is it running? What vCenter is it running on? And so on. But then as we pop down, we now can see performance information for this individual VM. This is how deep CloudIQ can go. Even down to an individual VM, we can see very detailed performance analytics. So I can see the CPU readiness, the active RAM, and I can see the storage latency as well. You probably noticed that there's a blue line, but there's also this kind of strange grey box that goes outside of it. Well, that's CloudIQ's projection for that metric. The blue line is what the metric was, and the grey box is what CloudIQ thought the metric was going to be between. Now that changes up and down a little bit, but it also means that we can very easily spot anything like this here. Well outside. This latency is shot way outside of what we'd expect. That's a huge anomaly there. So we're kind of halfway there. We know that this VM is playing up, and it's because of storage latency. That's why it's kind of not playing ball. But now we need to understand why. So on the right, we've got this topology map. automatically generated. I didn't have to do anything to build that. And I can see where that impact is being felt, actually pretty much across the board, with the exception of the network. But CloudIQ's put a little yellow triangle next to the storage array, saying, I think that's the possible cause. I think that is where this particular slowdown is coming from. And now is where the magic happens. All I need to do is select the performance impact in question. So it's a storage latency problem. Select that one and press details. And now CloudIQ will try and correlate it. So it's now said, okay, the latency shot up on this VM at about the same time and for the same duration that the IOPS shot up on these three workloads. Now, these three workloads, they're not related to that VM. They just happen to be on the same storage system. But the point is here, because they shot up quite high, they must have made the storage system struggle for resource. So imagine that. Within 5 seconds, I can connect the dots and say, hey, I know why that VM's going slow. And it's because these three LUNs, these three objects, have driven their workload up too high. And of course, if I want to, at the click of a button, I can say, well, tell me what lives on those particular LUNs. And I just click virtual machines. And now I'm looking at an individual LUN. And I can see which VMs are on there. And of course, then I can contact the app owner and I can say, hey, you're working the system a little bit too hard. That's what's causing one of our other VMs to go a little too slow. Now, connecting the dots is what makes CloudIQ really powerful. It has a huge amount of data at its disposal, but it's able to bring it all together and help you to really understand the story behind the story. So I mentioned this is an individual LUN. Let's look at it from a storage system level now. So this now is the system which is called Market Research. It's one of our Unity systems, and this is the system on which that particular VM has its storage. You can see this system has been given a score from 0 to 100, in this case 90, and so it's automatically coloured yellow, which is fair. We use a traffic light system, which is green, yellow, red, and we use that so that at a glance you can quickly see whether this system's in a good state, a bad state, or somewhere in the middle, which this one is. So we've got a few issues outstanding, nothing major, but we do have things that probably do need us to take action. I've got these list of issues or list of things that it's checking for, and you can see that components all clear, performance is all clear, data protection is all clear, but configuration and capacity both have an issue outstanding. Configuration's got a couple, and capacity's got a couple more as well. And each of these issues, what will happen is CloudIQ will log them, and it will tell us what the resolution is as well. So here we've got a host that's only connected to one controller, one node of that storage array. Perhaps not a big deal, not from a storage array point of view. The host potentially, it could be a big deal because the host will lose connectivity in the event of a code upgrade. So CloudIQ is making us aware of that and telling us how to fix it. At the bottom of the screen, we can see how the health scores changed over time, which is handy if you're performing any work, any remedial work, or if you want to see when this issue last occurred. You can actually go back 2 years on this history screen, which is great because it lets you really cast your mind back, see what other health issues have happened to this particular system. The way we navigate from within a system is we use these little tabs. So the next one over is inventory. This is going to tell us some more practical information about the system, and some of this is really handy because it tells us things like when the service contract is going to expire. This one's actually already expired a couple of months back, so we need to take some action there. Sometimes it can be tricky to keep on top of all of our service contracts if you've got quite a large data center environment. But CloudIQ has that information automatically. You don't need to populate it. It's already pulled down from our servers. So that means that it's always dead up to date. So it tells you straight away if you've got a system that's due to expire, and it will tell you if it's already expired, making sure that you know that you're always up to date and always kept on top of things. Underneath that, we can see which storage pools we have, file systems and LUNs. We can see VMs, drives themselves, and hosts. And you can see that these are all linked. So I can go right into an individual learn or right into an individual file system and get much more detail down at that really finite level of depth. What we really wanted to see is capacity and performance. So let's take a look at capacity. So from a capacity point of view, CloudIQ is going to show us how our capacity is being used. How does it break down? Is it predominantly block, file, vvol? Is it predominantly spinning disk, all flash disk? Is it a bit of a mixture of the two? So we get these really handy pie charts to start digging into that. This system's actually majority snapshots, and it's an all flash system, so we've only got one drive type here. Got a couple of storage pools, and they're actually both forecast to fill up within a month, very close together in terms of their usage percentage, which is probably what we would want. If I click a pool and then hit capacity, now it's going to give me a forecast. Now it does the forecast at the pool level because each pool can fill up independently. So here we've got a decent look back over what we have used, today's date, which is this line here, and then a look ahead over what the future's going to hold for us. In this way, we're able to say, okay, I know where we are now, and I know when we need to take action by. If this behavior continues, that's when there's going to be a shortfall, so that's when I'll need to take action. Oftentimes we might think, well, okay, that action means buying new storage. Well, sometimes, but not always. CloudIQ's got you covered there. Underneath, you can see we've got this breakdown in a bar chart of used and free. But in the middle, we've got this sort of hatched area. That is reclaimable space. This is where we've detected that you've got some objects that either don't have any I/O or don't have any hosts attached. Now, you may still need to keep them, but chances are pretty good you don't. And actually, you just haven't cleaned up the underlying storage. Perhaps the application's been migrated to a new system. Well, if that's the case, there's quite a lot of data that's sat on there that might not be needed anymore. We can detect that and point it out to you. So here on this system, for instance, I've actually got 4 terabytes of space that I can reclaim just by performing a deletion. Now, CloudIQ won't perform the deletion for us. We got to log into the system to do that, but that's by design. It doesn't have a backwards connection to the systems. It's not an administrative management tool. It's a monitoring tool. Now, that last tab was performance. And this is probably one of the main things we're going to be using a tool like this for, is to really keep an eye on our performance and understand what's going on and where we're not getting the performance that we want. So at the top, I can see all the different objects and items that I have, the various by latency, by IOPS, by bandwidth. And then as we pop down, we've got a bunch of different graphs showing us things like system-wide IOPS, bandwidth, and so on. But here again, we can see that AI coming into its own. So we've got the blue line being the metric, the grey box being what we expect the metric to be, and the dark blue being anywhere that the metric's well outside. This constantly changing, constantly dynamic, but it's always going to be projecting what it thinks the metric should be. The beauty of this is it gives you context. I often say that if you were to just look at a graph like this, it's quite hard to know, is that good? Is it bad? I don't really know what I'm looking at without any context. But if I add in that context like that, now it's much more valuable, because now I can look at that and go, okay, I'm able to see that now I know this particular spike here, that's unusual. That's something out of the ordinary. Just like before, if we find an impact, we can hit that details button and it'll identify why that happened. Because we're at the system level, it will also try and track it down to a resource as well. In this case, it's spotted that it's the CPU that's in contention here. So hopefully you'll agree, huge amount of detail that we can get to from an individual system level, from health, capacity, performance, and even simple inventory type stuff as well. There's a couple more things that I wanted to show, just because I think they're really powerful from a use case point of view. One of them I've mentioned a couple of times, and that is cybersecurity. So CloudIQ constantly tracks cybersecurity risk. Now, today, this is available for PowerStore and PowerMax systems. What it does is it runs a number of tests on the systems themselves. And anywhere that the system does not meet the criteria for that test, it'll flag it and report it back to us. To show you what I mean, here we've got a handful of risks outstanding. We've got a software upgrade required on a PowerMac system. That's considered a high severity issue. Data at rest encryption is not enabled. That's medium. We're not using LDAP certificate verification, and we don't have an SNMP trap destination configured. On the evaluation plan, we can see all the tests that are performed. So there's a bunch of different ones. Things like, are we using SNMP v3? Have we changed the default password? Are we using a self-signed certificate? Anywhere that we deviate, we flag it and make you aware of it. The really cool thing is I can customize this. I can disable any of these tests if they're not relevant for my organization. Take data at rest encryption. We might decide, well, actually, we encrypt at the application level, so we have no need for data at rest encryption. So we'll disable that test, and that way it won't alert us that it's disabled. Or we can leave them all on, and then we're kept abreast of anything that's not quite right, not quite configured correctly on this particular PowerMac system. This is actually one of the newer features in CloudIQ. One of the cool things about the platform in general is that we're routinely bringing new features out. Actually, it's probably on every couple of days, you'll see something new being added to the platform. And this is one example of that. Something else that's reasonably new is the ability to create your own custom reports. So it has a huge amount of built-in dashboards included. For instance, if I pop up here, I can see a global system capacity dashboard for storage. I see all my storage systems, how much capacity they have used and free, savings from data reduction, and I can also see the health score in this little bubble as well. I've got a global inventory view, which is more of a physical representation with a graphic. It also tells me the contract expiration date and the location. And as you might have guessed, we have a global performance dashboard as well, again showing us performance figures over the last 24 hours. But these might not quite do exactly what you want, so you're able to build your own. From this report screen, I can come up here, create my own report screen. Now I can add whatever content to this I want, and I can be really very specific indeed, or I can be quite generic. I could create, for instance, just a table of all the servers that I've got, showing me things like health score, physical location, contract expiration. Or I could be really specific and show things like bandwidth for a specific volume. I could show things like I/O size, latency. I could show things like discards for a particular switch port on just one switch. Up here, I've got some for LUNs and file systems. Just a generic report for every LUN in the environment and every file system. Now, how you do this is you pop up here, hit add content, pick the thing that you would like to measure. So let's say PowerStore, choose the metric, bandwidth, choose the object, and then just hit add content. You can then go ahead and schedule this report as well. So this report can be sent out as a PDF once a day, once a week, once a month, or you can just have it as a live dashboard that's viewable every time you log in. Either way, it's a dead easy way to kind of get really to the heart of what you're trying to see from within CloudIQ. These will be persistent as well. So each and every time you log in, you'll be able to see exactly what you want to see and when you want to see it. And the final new thing that I did want to show, if we pop up here and click integrations, this is where we can see within CloudIQ how we can connect it to some other tools that we have. So we've established that it's got a huge amount of data at its fingertips. What we can do with the API is start to get that data out and put it into other tools of our choice. We actually support two versions of API, both a push and a pull. So I can send an API request to CloudIQ and pull information back. Or if something changes, CloudIQ can push an API request out. To show how these look, I've actually opened up the developer portal. The developer portal is a page that's freely publicly available, and it's got some great examples of how to leverage some of these APIs. So this is a push. I can send an API request to CloudIQ, and it can reply back with a JSON that's got all the information that I wanted in. I can request specific details about volume, specific details about a particular network switch, you name it. But this is great for plugging into some of the other tools that we might want to use in our environment. And that's where the other API comes in too. The other API being that push API. If I just pop back a sec. Here we go, webhooks. So this, it's going to actually enable CloudIQ to send an API call when it detects something change. So let's say the health has just changed on a particular Unity system. It's just gone perhaps a little bit downhill. You know, something's not quite right with that particular system. CloudIQ can immediately raise an API call, can send that across, and it can send that to wherever you want it to. Teams, Slack, ServiceNow, these are the pretty often given examples. But what you can do is you can plug that in with some code that looks a bit like this, and then it can raise an incident in ServiceNow automatically, or it can post directly into a Teams channel with a button that just has exactly how to get to the heart of the issue. Again, this can help it exist beyond the great portal that it is and really integrate it in the other tools that you have in your environment and within your organization. So a lot to take in. And what I would want to do is summarize, and I'll invite Barry back on to join me as well. But the best way to summarize really is that CloudIQ is all about getting the heart of the data. It's getting all the data that it has at its disposal and really getting a true understanding of what it means for you, for your organization, and how you can resolve it as quick as possible. Whether that means finding performance impacts and the cause of them, whether that means forecasting capacity shortfalls and where you could got some capacity you can free up, or things like understanding even down to an individual VM level. So for me, it's all about getting kind of behind the data to the real understanding. That's something you'd agree with, Barry?
Yeah, definitely. No, I've been really impressed to see it. I think it's fair to say I've not seen an update personally on it in a while, and I think just what I want to reflect on is how far it's come in sort of a very short time. I remember, I can't remember, was it Unity was the first platform that was
Unity,
supported with
that's
this?
right.
So it was Unity, and it was very much just an extension to monitor what was going on in the cloud. So it was a bit more accessible and things like that. But from what you've shown today with the integrations across the Dell portfolio, with the ability not just kind of have a look at high level metrics, but to also do root cause analysis, it's not a nice to have tool anymore. It's that must have tool that's going to help you kind of have an eye on what's going on. And I think what was certainly even more impressive towards the end there were the bits that you were showing around the APIs. We're seeing lots of customers now look at things like DevOps or AI Ops, the ability for them to be able to kind of automate what is going on inside their organization to make sure they can focus on the bits that really matter to them. At the end of the day, no one in IT is really being paid to watch flashing disks spin on storage kind of thing. We're all now responsible for day-to-day business changing outcomes. So we need to be looking at ways that we can make sure that we're delivering the best outcomes with the technology that we have. And for me, with CloudIQ, this is a technology that lots of customers maybe don't realize that they've actually got, or maybe haven't explored a lot with what's going on. So all the way from getting that root cause analysis to then seeing if it can then help you with that final mile with DevOps and things like AI Ops, I think is really important. So certainly interested to see where it goes next and what the future will bring with the platform. But thank you for your time today, Stuart.
No problem. No, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm glad it's been interesting and completely agree with you. It's come a long way. But a lot more to go. You know, I'm sure there's even better developments yet to come.
Brilliant. Well, thank you to everyone that's joined us on the webinar today, and for those of you that are watching the recording that we're sending out later. Once again, many thanks to Stuart for joining me today. Hopefully, one day we might get you on our Define Tomorrow stage in front of 200 of our customers to do some real life demos to them as well to show the power of this technology. But thank you to everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.